Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the Eternal set review for the new set Defiance. Today it's time to start talking about the Justice cards, so let's get started. Alright, so first we have Endure. That's the Justice 0 cost spell. Like I said, there's one in each color. Give one of your units invulnerable to damage this turn. It's not fast, making this pretty unexciting and limited in its use. Not even sure if it's gonna be playable in limited, honestly, probably not. And in constructed it's totally unplayable. If it was a fast spell, however, it would obviously be a super amazing trick and would probably be way too good for 0. So that's kind of the problem here. Like 0 as a non-fast spell, it's kind of unplayable. As a fast spell, it would be insane. 0 cost stuff is pretty hard to balance, I think. Next we have Adjudicator's Gavel. That card is not relevant to limited really, but for constructed it's pretty amazing. The card is clearly meant as a market card, as a one-off, not usually something you're gonna play in the main deck. I guess it can matter if this effect really matters in the meta game and you care about cheap relics in your main deck. But usually this will just be a one-off in markets and black markets, but it is a pretty awesome market option at that, since we were really lacking some reliable, cheap market tools to fight the opposing void, and this is awesome for that. Next we have Defiance, one of the most impactful cards in my opinion from the new set. The card is just pretty pushed, honestly. The card would still be pretty good at 2 power, and the way it stands at 1 power, the card is just insane. You get to kill a 3 cost or less unit, like a unit that costs 3 or less, which is an awesome rate. Anything really, no limitations other than that it has to be attacking, and in a game that mostly has units that are made to be attacking, and there are very few units that you want to or need to kill, but that can just do dangerous things to you without attacking. This is super universal, very powerful, as long as your deck is defensive enough to be usually on defense, and the opponent will be the attacker. If you're obviously the aggressor more often than not, this has no place in your deck because it doesn't deal with blockers at all. And the line that it even stuns units that it cannot kill is just such an incredible free throw-in that makes the card even more versatile. Like, you can use this if you have to, I don't know, stun a unit before clearing the board with the sweeper and stuff like that. The possibilities are incredible. The card is so flexible, so versatile, and so cheap. It's amazing. This card single-handedly will change the meta game and improve control decks massively and put a lot of pressure on lower curve aggressive decks. Limited, this is obviously no different. It is a pretty good card in limited too. A little less good maybe because the lower drops in limited often don't matter as much, but the card is still very flexible and strong. So definitely a totally fine playable there. Next we have Oni Samurai. Initially I was pretty skeptical of the card because like 1-2 stats on a 1-drop are pretty underwhelming, and the unit clearly is meant to be aggressive as a 1-drop with Warcry. But the thing is, Warcry on a 1-drop is so good, after like thinking a bit about it and like talking with my friend Patrick Dickman about it. He was like, yeah, hey, this guy might be actually pretty good, and like how would that 8 Oni deck be and all. So yeah, the card actually has some solid merit. Having the constant turn 1 Warcry into turn 2 Warcry can snowball games pretty hard, and maybe there's like some interesting I don't know, Argentport or Rakano base deck that wants this as a 1-drop just to get the Warcry snowball going. So the card is relevant to constructed, not sure how good, but definitely not bad. And in limited, I guess, once again, it comes down to how aggressive your deck is. If you draft a dedicated aggressive deck, this seems like a pretty good 1-drop. If not, this will be on the bench. Next we have Sweatios Bravery. The card's actually kinda cool and interesting and gives us some flashbacks of old Protect, but the problem is also that the card is pretty situational in its use. It gives one of your units +1/+1 this turn. That's not particularly great for 1 power. But what is great is if it's wielding a weapon, the unit also gets Aegis. So yeah, if you have a deck that has enough weapons and weapon wielding units in it, then this card suddenly becomes amazing and is almost a better version of the old Protect when it still cost 1, and we all know how strong that card was. So in the right deck, this is stellar. Otherwise, the card is not really playable and relevant. In limited, basically the same thing. Next we have Unmoored Valkyrie. In Magic we have Unmoored Ego, here we have Unmoored Valkyrie. Why not? It's a 1/1 flying for 1, and on Renown it gets Lifesteal. Nothing impressive, nothing particularly constructed relevant, but seems like a potentially decent card in limited. If you have a bunch of ways to trigger Renown, put some stats on this, then a medium-sized lifesteal flyer can be really powerful and run away with the game pretty hard. So should be a decent limited card even for 1/1 for 1. Then we have X Sharpener, a 2-cost 2/3 Minotaur. So Minotaur being a relevant tribe, sort of. On Entomb you create and draw a copy of each weapon X Sharpener was wielding. So this goes well with weapons to put on, like for example turn 3 Shogun Scepter, then attack if the opponent trades, you get the scepter back and stuff. The problem is the competition is pretty high in the 2-cost slot at this point, and the base stats of 2/3 are pretty underwhelming, and the Entomb sure is kinda nice, but it's also quite situational, and I think overall the card will be a bit too underpowered to be relevant and constructed at this point. So yeah, not seeing this in constructed most likely. It's not terrible, but it's just worse than other things. In limited, however, this seems pretty good. Like 2-cost 2/3s are already pretty solid in limited, and then the Entomb and the fact that there are more weapons potentially in limited than in constructed, because there is less reliable ways to punish it, makes this a pretty good limited 2-drop. Then we have Barrel Through, basically a 2-cost Finest Hour that fixes your fire or primal influence. Nothing to write home about, pretty sure unplayable in constructed, but in limited this seems like a very solid, very robust trick. Finest Hour is incredible in limited, this is still very solid in limited, plus the fixing coming in handy in limited as well. Seems like a pretty nice limited trick to me. Then we have Chancellor's Horn. It's a 2-cost relic. On Empower you gain 1 armor. After the 5th use, after the 5th Empower, you sacrifice Chancellor's Horn to draw a unit of your choice with more health than attack from your deck. So this could be interesting in a deck that actually makes some use of the armor and is kind of controlling enough to care about this requiring 5 triggers and yeah, tutoring some stuff. There are a couple of solid units that come to mind for this, something like Vara, the new red-green smuggler, Brel, for example, and probably a bunch more. Tavrot, and so on. There's a bunch of good units, even if you're in time, Sandstorm Titan, Wallbreaker Behemoth. There's a lot of things that fit the bill and that could be really nice here. Like imagine some armory style deck with this that makes use of the armor and maybe even play Smuggler, Tavrot and Brel, or like Smuggler and Brel or Smuggler and Tavrot. Could be worth it. Not 100% sure, and it probably works best if you have something like Brel to tutor for, like a high drop, because this will be triggering on turn 7, so basically for an on-curve Brel if you play this on turn 2, and it can help you get armor for your turn 3 or 4 weapon in the process and stuff. So yeah, a bit slow. The problem is if you draw it later, you might never get the trigger or it takes too long. So there are a bunch of issues here, but the card is not completely uninteresting. So it's something to keep in mind and maybe yeah, think of when you're building a deck that kind of would benefit from all of these aspects, and then maybe try it out. In limited, I don't really see this. It's a very bad draw later on, and the payoff is also not that great. So yeah, makes more sense when you have dedicated high quality targets and a more focused game plan. Then we have Fall Short. Kill an enemy unit without battle skills. Seems like an okay removal in limited, but not great. Most relevant things have some form of battle skill. One of the things you want to kill most in limited usually are flyers, and this can't do that. But what it can do is kill some of the bigger vanilla units, like the 4-cost 4/4s and stuff like that, so some time fatties. But I would have to play with the card to see how playable it is, see how often you just kind of sit there and it doesn't do anything, or at least like comprehensively look at the entire limited format and see how many good targets there are. The card, like the fact that it is without battle skills, is a super steep restriction that might make this card even not really playable at all. In limited. In constructed, this is not realistically gonna make it. Next we have Golem Press. We talked about this as a spoiler already. It's a 2-cost relic, which can matter these days because there are relic synergies. And if you have no steel golems, you may pay 2 to play a 1/1 steel golem with double damage. It's a bit odd why you can only make 1 at a time. Like, I mean, it is a press, so it should kind of like chain produce them and just produce 1 every turn. So it's kind of odd that there's this limitation. It is not really intuitive in the flavor and theme of the card, really. But I mean, it is a power level concern, that restriction, obviously, but it's still a bit of a weird, arbitrary restriction. Unlikely that this is what you want to be doing in constructed, but in limited this seems pretty worthwhile, churning out effectively better 2/1s for 2 power every time you lose 1 for this rate seems like a pretty good deal all in all. And last but not least for the first part, we have Oyan Crownbreaker. It's a 2-cost 2/1. On Empower he gets +2/+2 and lifesteal, so kind of more of a aggressive mid-range unit than necessarily a pure aggro unit, since the aggro decks usually don't utilize the lifesteal as much, so you will get the most out of this in a bit bigger mid-rangier aggressive deck, where this helps you a lot against decks that try to go under you. But I mean, it's still fine. In aggro, the lifesteal just doesn't do as much there. And on Renown, you get to play a Justice Sigil from your deck depleted, so basically on turn 3 you can play something on this and ramp from 3 to 5, which is pretty nice. It also obviously synergizes with its Empower and potential other Empower cards in your deck, especially in, say, Combre, where there's a bunch more Empower. So yeah, it's a pretty good card, but keep in mind, in its base form, it's a 2/1, which is nothing to sneeze at, or rather, in this case, something that even sneezing at is gonna just kill Hoyan. And there's a bunch more good 1 health units in this set, so I think we will see an increase of 1 health across the board, which probably will lead to people more punishing it with market cards like Torrential Downpour, maybe Alpine Tracker and that sort of stuff. So it's something to be aware of and not get too punished by. But Hoyan at least provides some way around this by like triggering the Renown on their turn to get an Empower trigger and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean the card is pretty strong. Usually it will be a 4/3 lifesteal for 2 attacking. The other thing is, in a deck that is a bit more mid-rangey, a bit bigger and not like low to the ground aggressive, you will have more power, which in turn makes it longer reliable as a 4/3, while in your like 25 power low to the ground aggro, this might attack once or twice and then it's like a 2/1 for 2, which is not great. So when building with this, keep these things in mind. In limited, this is obviously a premium 2-drop. Just pick it up when you see it, when you adjust this, and you'll be happy to have it. Okay, this concludes the first part of the Justice cards. I will try and wrap up the justice before I have to leave to my old hometown, be with family over Christmas, and then I will pick up the review with Primal once I get back, I think. So I'll hope I manage the other 2 justice parts before I have to leave tomorrow. But I'll try and do one like tonight before I go to sleep, and maybe one tomorrow before I have to leave or something. We'll see how it works out. Anyway, until then, you can catch me live streaming later. I want to brew some Pauper for the new event. I've not thought about a thing yet. I'll just do all the things on stream and figure it out as we go with the viewers. That should be the most fun anyway. And yeah, as usual, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. You can do this by clicking on the awesome new channel logo that I have now, thanks to my awesome teammate, Level 13 David, who created the entire logo and rebranding of my channel with me, and he did an awesome job. So big shout out to him here. If you ever need some graphics work done, hit him up on Discord and see what he can do for you. I'm sure his work will well worth your time and money. I'm super happy with what he did for me. And speaking of stream, you can also find me on Twitter and Facebook to see when I go live and catch all the latest news and updates. And of course, just follow me directly on Twitch. Turn on the notifications there as well to see when I go live. You can find all this info in the description as well. Easy as links to click. And yeah, one last thing. If you want to help support the content and our team website for free, please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube on your ad block, and just check out the ads. That would really help a lot. I usually only put ads at the beginning and end of each video to not disrupt the viewing experience, and you can just check them out before and after the video, and that already helps a ton. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back with the second part soon. I'm your host, Manu S. See you next time.